everybody, so for today's card I'm doing a baby card and I'm using mostly some of the steel die cuts from CC Designs, and what my plan was to make a couple of little banners spelling out the new baby's name. So what I did was I took the CC Designs, the mini alphabet and numbers die, and I die cut some brown cardstock and then arranged all the letters for the name, and then I used the mini banner die and die cut some pattern paper. I'm using pattern paper from my Simple Stories Fabulous 6x6 pack. So I die cut two different patterns with the die, so I ran it through a couple of times to get enough and then arranged them one by one. And then I went through and sponged every single one with two different Memento inks. I started with Toffee Crunch and then added a little bit of Rich Cocoa. So a fair bit time consuming, but you can see what a difference it makes. And also the person I made this for is actually a friend of mine, and I like going kind of the extra mile for cards like this for when you know people really appreciate and understand that you've spent a lot of time on the card. So I had kind of planned all this out ahead of time before I trimmed everything and filmed the video on that, because it's kind of one of those sort of finicky cards and you want to make sure like the banners are going to fit and yada yada yada. So after I was done sponging all of the little banner pieces, I just used my Tombow Mono Multi Glue and then just lightly dabbed the glue on the back of each letter, adhered them to the little banners, and then that was it. And then for the card front, I took the same brown cardstock and I ran it through my Big Shot using this is the CC Designs wood grain embossing plate, and it gives a really kind of finer texture than just like a regular embossing folder. I love it. So it kind of just looks like how you would buy textured cardstock. So really cool effect and really simple and to adhere over it. I honestly love the thing, and it's solid steel, so it'll last you the rest of your life. So this was the first time I used it, and I'll need to pull it out some more because I really like how it looked. So did that, and then I cut some more pattern paper from that same pack. They had different little sections where they had like little squares like this with like embellishments and that on them. So I cut one of those down, and then I'm inking up parts of sentiments from my Welcome Little One sentiment set. So I started with the congratulations using Memento Rosebud ink, and then using the Rich Cocoa ink for the next part of the sentiment. And I'm just using my clear stamp positioner for this. It works perfectly for when I've designed sets like this that are in rubber, so you can see exactly where you're stamping. You can kind of fiddle around and figure out exactly where you want it to go and how it's going to look before you even stamp it. I've shown this thing in a ton of videos. Like, I can't live without my stamp positioner. It just makes life so much easier when you're making cards like this. So I've got the sentiment stamped, and then as always, like, everything was sponged. Like I've kind of mentioned that before, if I start sponging one thing, I pretty much sponge everything I'm going to do on the card. It just kind of makes everything go together, and I just like the look of it too. It just gives a little more of a distressed look. So did that, matted that with some aqua cardstock, and then adhered a couple more of the pattern paper strips together and adhered that to the card front. So once I've got the strips adhered where I want them, because like I said, I'd had this kind of planned out ahead of time and I kind of have a very specific layout in mind to make sure everything fit properly. I wrapped around my favorite go-to ribbon in the color I always use, which is my AmyRs Two Tones ribbon. So wrapped that around, tied it in a bow, trimmed off the ends, and then I'm going to adhere the sentiment to the card front. And this is going to be a 5.5 inch square card. I always like to do bigger cards for things like this, like baby cards, or when I'm doing like custom work like this, just because it gives it it's a bigger impact when you do a larger card. So the middle name fit perfectly on the sentiment piece, which I had figured out when I was like figuring out the layout and stuff. So I adhered that, and then for the first name, the little strip comes with the little banner die elements. So I die cut that, had sponged it, and then to adhere the little banners for the letters, just a really thin strip of glue along the top, and then I just started adhering them down. You got to be careful with stuff like this. I did it all upside down so that I could make sure they were lined up evenly. But yeah, you just got to pay attention to make sure you don't like adhere the letters wrong or spell the name wrong or something, and then yeah, you'll have to rip it all apart. So I did that. Everything fit good. So then adhere that to the card itself. Just a bit more Tombow Mono Multi. So got that adhered, and then I just flip it over and trim off the ends with my scissors so they're not hanging off the card. Sometimes you could leave it, but I didn't like how that would look with the two little ends hanging off. It just looked unfinished. So trim those off. And then I grabbed a bunch of little like Prima flowers and a few little felt flowers that I had in my stash. I've had them for years. So kind of positioned them where I wanted them, and then just use different sizes of brown brads to attach them to the card front. So once I've got all of those attached where I want them, as always, just flipping it over and using plain old Scotch acid-free tape to tape over the backs of the ribbon, some of the brads that were really close to the edge. It just makes it easier for the ATG adhesive to glide over that so it doesn't get caught up on the little metal bits or on the ribbon. And then just adhering that to a piece of green cardstock that I trimmed down for the card. So once the outside was done, it's just a matter of going on to the inside. And again, just more pattern paper from the same pack. And then I trimmed down this one piece that was in the back, and it perfectly fit this sentiment again from my little Welcome Little One sentiment set. So I inked it up with the rosebud ink. Use my stamp positioner again to make sure I get it centered right in the middle of that piece of pattern paper. So just like so. Usually I don't use pieces of pattern paper like this on my cards. I just usually don't know what to do with them. But for every once in a while, like cards like this, it just works perfectly. So got it stamped, matted that again onto another piece of just aqua cardstock that I'd sponged, and then I cut another strip of brown cardstock and ran it through my Big Shot with that wood grain embossing plate, just for the continuity, so to give it that little bit of texture. And since again, like it's a fine texture, it's not really deep embossing, so you can use it for the inside of a card, whereas if I'd used a regular embossing folder, it would have made the inside so bulky. So adhered that, and then left the rest of the piece of pattern paper blank there so I could write something to the people I was giving it to. Adhere that to the inside of the card, and then last but not least, I grabbed my cinnamon stickles and filled in all the letters of the name just to give it not so much sparkle, but it gave it some texture and really made the name stand out even more. So I just thought that was a really cute touch. And then I just added it to the centers of the little flowers on the pattern paper, and that's all there was to it. So there'll be a link below to my blog post with links to all the supplies used, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!